Merhaba, günaydın. Sizleri Hedefler için İş Dünyası platformu, DEKÜP Döngüsel Ekonomi Kooperatifi ve İş Dünyası ve Sürdürülebilir Kalkınma Derneği adına selamlıyorum. Finlandiya Büyükelçiliği ve Business Finland stratejik partnerliğinde hazırladığımız Türkiye Döngüsel Ekonomi Haftası'nın dördüncü gününde sizlerle olmak.
Circular Economy Week. We have in the fourth day. Thank you for come joining us. From the first day of our event and coming here, we always had information about sustainable economy, circular economy, and green economy. With your participation and your attention, we had lots of things we learned and shared. We talked about Finland's circular economy's journey. We tried to give an answer to how the society should change for the circular economy. And in our second day, we talked about how the regions are adapting to the Paris Climate Agreement. And we discussed the roadmap of Turkey's for circular economy. In our third day, sustainability, circular economy, and innovation relationship. We tried to discussion everything. If you missed anything and if you want to watch it again, next week all of our sessions shall be in the YouTube channels of the organizers of our event. Today we have a really great program. 17 March to Thursday, we have really great speakers and presenters. Our sessions are waiting for you. First session is for the tries to answer an important question. The question is that what is just transition? And after that, sustainable economy and for circular economy, how the correct communication should be. We are going to start working on it for the fall of day. There will be simultaneous translation for all sessions. I hope that it will be a great day for everyone. What is just transition? Um, from UNDP specialist about the green economy, Mihail Pela, and from Sander Hepers, and Green Economy Program Director Bahadır Matakın, founder of River Scale. We have Amfori representative from Turkey, Müge Tuna, and from we have Dr. Baran. I like to call on the stage. I like to give the stage to Mr. Mihali.
Thank you very much, Banu, for this really nice introduction. Today we will have a session discussing what is a fair transition. And we have 5 great presenters who will look on this issue from quite different perspectives. After that, we will have a number of questions for discussions. I have my list of questions, but dear participants, you have an opportunity to submit your questions, and we will include them in discussion. Without further ado, I would invite Sander Haperts, who is a policy coordinator for Just Transition Fund European Commission. Sander, please, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes for presentation.
Thank you very much, Mikhail. I'm very happy to join you from the European Commission here in Brussels to talk to you about how the European Union sees just transition. And what I will explain to you is that for us, the just transition or a fair transition is an essential pillar of the European Green Deal. As you know, I suppose the European Green Deal is the European Commission's or the European Union's strategy for achieving a climate neutral continent by 2050. It is a policy agenda that includes also the circular economy. It includes making the transport system green, the food system green. So it is really a holistic policy agenda that contains many different elements, and I will focus today on the just transition pillar. Now, the just transition is also linked to the European Union's cohesion policy. This is a policy that has been there for several decades, which basically represents 1/3 of the EU budget. So in the current financial framework, it is almost 400 billion euros that will be spent in investments in all EU regions, with the focus on the less developed regions. And this is because not all regions start from the same point. And this policy will therefore also have an important role in achieving the objectives of the European Green Deal through investments in innovation according to each region's strength. And this is also in innovation priorities linked to achieving a circular economy, for instance. It will also be spent on investments to deploy technological and social innovation on a large scale. So for instance, really large scale investments to deploy energy efficiency solutions, circular economy solutions, renewable energy, green infrastructure, biodiversity investments, all of these things. It will help regions to phase out unsustainable practices, and then also ensure a just transition for all regions, because the vision of a just transition in the European Green Deal is that no region is left behind. We do not want to repeat the mistakes that were made in the past when, for instance, in the 70s or in the 60s, coal mines were closed and entire regions were left behind. This is something that we want to avoid, and this is why the just transition mechanism was created as part of the European Green Deal. This mechanism has 3 pillars, as you can see on the slide, but I will focus today on the first one, which is the Just Transition Fund, which is a new fund that represents almost 20 billion euros, and that will help that will be spent in all member states. So here you can see the allocations to each member state of the European Union.
Sander, we don't see your slides. If you could please share your screen, that would be easier to follow.
Indeed, that would be much easier. I agree. I hope you can see them now.
It's coming on screen.
So basically, you see them now? I showed this slide about European Green Deal. When I spoke about cohesion policy, here I was just showing the numbers and the objectives. These are the 3 pillars of the Just Transition mechanism. So I will focus on the first pillar, which is the Just Transition Fund, the allocations per member state, and then I was here. So what will this Just Transition Fund that represents almost 20 billion euros do? It will focus on the regions that are the hardest hit by the transition to climate neutral economy. And these are essentially 2 types of regions. One type is the so-called coal regions. These are regions that are heavily dependent on the production or extraction of coal, lignite, peat or oil shale, so the production of hard fossil fuels. And of course, these industries, they have to phase out. They will disappear. There is no future for coal in the European Union in a climate neutral economy. So obviously, these regions, they will need help to with the phase out of coal production. But on the other hand, also industries that are heavily dependent on carbon intensive industries, such as steel, cement, or chemicals, can receive help from the Just Transition Fund. These carbon intensive industries are not meant to disappear. We do not want them to leave Europe or to close their activities, but they will have to face a massive transformation of their activities in order to be in line with the climate neutral economy. So regions that are heavily dependent on these types of activities and that face a negative socioeconomic impact from the transition because of the need for reskilling or the closure of certain power plants or certain activities, they can receive help from the Just Transition Fund. And on this map, you can see which regions the Commission has proposed for receiving the Just Transition Fund, but we are currently negotiating with member states the details of this. And member states are expected to develop so-called territorial just transition plans. In these plans, they need to explain to us what their transition process is at national level, so how they want to achieve a climate neutral economy in line with the EU's 2030 and 2050 climate and energy targets. They have to show to us which impact this transition will have at the level of the territory which should receive the Just Transition Fund. These can be social impacts like expected unemployment or need for reskilling. These can be economic impacts linked to the closure of certain activities. These can also be demographic, environmental or health impacts. And then in these plans, they will describe the investments that they need to alleviate these impacts. Primarily, these investments should be about reskilling the people that are hit by the transition, and also economic diversification. So to make sure that each region has as a new and a green economic future after the transition. This is what leaving no region behind means for us. As I said, we are currently negotiating with all member states their plans for the Just Transition Fund. This happens in a partnership. This means that member states are expected to involve the public and involve all necessary stakeholders in the preparation and the implementation of the Just Transition Fund. So who are these stakeholders? There are obviously the local and regional authorities, the employers, but also the employees, the trade unions, civil societies such as environmental NGOs, academia. Also youth is for us very important that they have a voice in shaping the future of their own regions. At the European level, we also take this partnership principle very close to our heart. This is why we established the Just Transition platform, which is meant to help all the stakeholders in accessing the support that is available under the Just Transition mechanism. We will organize twice a year high-level Just Transition platform events. The next one is to take place from the 10th to 12th of May. This will be open to everyone, also to all of you if you wish to join. And this is to share good practices, to help really stakeholders build the capacity to exchange. We're also working on a new web page. We have established working groups that are there to help the carbon-intensive regions, so those regions dependent on steel, cement, chemicals, paper, or other kinds of industries that have to undergo significant transformation. And these working groups are there to really work on a vision on what is the just transition for these regions. So this is my last slide. On these links here, you can visit the Just Transition platform. You can also subscribe to a newsletter that we have, and I am of course available for any other question that you may have afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sander, for very profound presentation of European Just Transition Fund. And it's quite interesting to see how you consider in economy, environment, and social cohesion, social equity issues together for fair transition, and how you build in partnership for this transition, and making sure that it works for everyone and no one is left behind. You mentioned reskilling, and I think this will be a conversation during next session. We will have discussion after all presentations. And now I pass the floor to Bahadır Akin, who is Green Affairs Specialist at International Labour Organization, Turkey. Bahadır, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. I'll continue my participation here in English to facilitate the discussion, and hopefully my Turkish colleagues will forgive me. following up on Sanders' comprehensive introduction to the issue, I'd like to give some background on where the just transition concept came about and how it has developed over the period. I'll go through it very quickly on the definition of these concepts, because I find there's often a lot of confusion on what these concepts actually mean. So some background first. The history of the just transition comes from the US labor movement from the 1980s, where a very specific example happened that's still very relevant today. The coal industry, coal mine had to be closed down, and it was considered what to do with these people once the coal mine would be closed down. And the US labor movement coined the concept of the just transition, which was later adopted by Asian and European countries as well. And it has been focal to the ILO's mission and mandate since the 1980s, actually. Since then, the ILO has worked quite comprehensively on developing this agenda. It was also included in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement's introduction, where it was mentioned as central to all efforts for the economic transition to a green economy, and to also ensure that the just transition concept is taken into account in all changes to the green economy and the system. Anyway, so the concept encompasses a human-centered approach to organize the just transition from brown jobs to green. The ILO defines green jobs as decent jobs, so basically jobs that have full social protection and carbon-reducing effects as well, to be considered green jobs. As such, any job could be considered as a green job as long as it has some sort of benefit to the environment. So any measurable effect of reducing carbon emissions. As such, the just transition concept cannot be considered without the ILO's concept of the social dialogue being the tripartite system where employer and employee unions come together as well as relevant government stakeholders to come together and discuss a human-centered approach to how we can transition out people from brown sectors. For example, the easiest example being transitioning out from coal to new sectors. Sanders already mentioned about upskilling and reskilling in these considerations, of course, but basically there's no one-size-fits-all solution to any of these issues, and in each case, all stakeholders should have come together at an equal platform to discuss how and where they can indeed facilitate the just transition. This may be required, this can be done locally or at the national level, of course, and the main point of it is to ensure that no one's left behind. So, all right, after this introduction, thank you.
Thank you very much, Bahadir, for this quite interesting historical overview. And what I find really exciting about ILO definition of green jobs is combination of decent and environmentally friendly. And I firmly believe that green jobs cannot be really green if they are not decent. And I believe during next session, we will see some example because we will have another presenter from ILO speaking at next session. With this, I would like to invite Anssi Mikola, who is a founder of River Recycle organization. And he will talk about just transition issues from this perspective. Anssi, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I think we have a very different kind of approach or direction towards fair transition. The background of us is that I'm a serial entrepreneur by profession, and back about 3 years ago, I had an attack of something called the bubbling mind syndrome. It tends to work so that whenever there's a free space in the mind, it starts automatically solving the last problem it has seen. And I come aware of the fact that there's a lot of plastic going to the oceans, especially through the rivers, and then invented something called a river cleaner, then started calling to countries that have issues with river waste, or river plastic waste especially, and pretty soon found out that the ocean plastic problem is actually not a technological problem at all. It is a socio-political issue that is causing the plastic going into the ocean. And on this map, you can see the countries that are kind of interest for us. These are the darker the area on the map, the more plastic waste is going into the ocean due to our linear business model. Because the way the system works is that we've developed a very effective packaging system to keep food from spoiling on the way to the consumer. And it is said that if we just stopped using plastic in packaging, in developing countries, about 30% of the food would be spoiled. And that would obviously cause a massive amount of CO2 emissions in food production if 1/3 were to be thrown away. Now, the issue with the plastic getting into the ocean, which is probably the worst place for it to be, is actually in the local waste management system. Now, to an extent, it's actually quite, say, circular, but it's leaking. What we have here is an Indonesian sorting station. It's a waste sorting station where mixed waste, mixed plastic comes to the sorting station. It is very well picked. Everything that has any value, the PETs, your polypropylenes, anything that can be recycled mechanically is very well picked up. But then the rest, there is no infrastructure for the low value plastics to be recycled. And I tend to, this is quite sad, I tend to joke that this is probably one of the most efficient and lean sorting stations I've ever seen in my life, because everything that is not needed is thrown only a few meters away. You can keep throwing it around the year, and then during the rainy season, it's all washed away, out of sight, out of mind, and you can keep on throwing more. Of course, it results in an ecological catastrophe. But then when you take a closer look at the situation, it's a really odd state of affairs. Everybody agrees that there's a problem with the ocean plastics. There's actually quite a bit of technology that would be able to clean the rivers. But when we go and ask countries if they would like to have their rivers cleaned, we have no buyers for river cleaning technology. So why do we not have buyers? Because when you think of it from the river mouth municipalities' point of view, this is a cost. First of all, they feel that the plastic didn't go into the river from their city, but rather from upstream. So why should they be collecting it from the river? Because the moment you collect it from the river, what used to be absolutely nobody's problem becomes the problem of the person whose land it's on. And that would then be the river mouth municipality. So there's a negative incentive to do anything about it, because as long as it's in the water, it's nobody's problem. The Waterway Authority absolutely disclaims it because waste doesn't belong to the Waterway Authority. And then you have development banks who actually have billions of dollars reserved for saving the marine ecosystem. But we must remember that it's a bank, so they need it paid back. So why would somebody take a loan to clean a river when the only thing you can do at, for example, Jakarta, is you can take it to the local landfill, which is by truck 3 hours away, and they will cost you hundreds of thousands of euros every year to dump it to a landfill, which, by the way, is first of all completely full, and second of all has been illegal for the past 11 years because it's not a sanitary landfill. So you're in a funny situation where there's plenty of money, there's plenty of technology, but everybody has a veto. not on our land. We're not responsible. We would give money, but nobody's asking for it. So it's everybody's problem, but nobody's responsibility. So how have we tackled this? Is we've created something called river cleaning as a free service. So the way it works is that we take the problem of riverborne plastics and turn it into an industry that creates fair jobs and takes the informal waste pickers into formal economy. So the first part is taking the plastics out by our cleaner, then sorting them, and whatever valuables there are left after the sorting station that you already saw. We then take the non-valuables, which is the part that usually goes in the river, and bring in technology. In our case, mostly for the low values, it's pyrolysis. There are a few other technologies as well, but in general, pyrolysis is the one that can tackle the issue of low-cost plastics. And after that, we sell the oil. And the oil, unlike plastics, is quite transportable. The oil is then sold back to the plastics industry, which turns it back to plastics. And this creates a completely circular plastic packaging loop. So we can stop using or reduce the use of virgin fossil raw material for plastics. So we can hold on to the practical uses of plastic without pumping more oil and gas out of the ground. But that's not really the final goal. What I have here on the slide is we call ourselves a self-destructing business model. And what that means in practice is that once we have the pyrolysis working, we start transitioning towards land-based collection systems. So we're setting land-based segregating collection systems along the river. And what we hope will be an ecological glimpse of an eye. There will be no more plastic in the rivers. We can pick up the river cleaners and the world will be clean. Plastics industry or packaging industry will be circular. And we have created a huge number of jobs in the developing countries. So what does it look like in practice? This is our, technical problems. This is our operation in Mumbai. The river is tidal. So what we catch twice a day is about this much, 3 to 7 tons of waste. The river changes direction twice a day. So one of these catches is in the daytime, the other one is at night. Our system then collects the waste based on solar energy, so it doesn't take any external energy. And in this case, there's a very high lifting system because the tidal difference is 4.5 meters. And as you can see, the waste is then picked up. It goes up to the land and is hand sorted. The Indian speciality here is that we get about 20% shoes, but normally we would get about 40% plastics and the rest is vegetation and other kinds of waste. So we sort it, as said, the valuables, meaning the PETs and other mechanically recyclables, go to recycling. The rest go to shredding to our pyrolysis site, are then fed into the pyro machine, the preheater, the actual reactor, turned to oil, and then each batch is tested in our lab so that it's acceptable to the off-taker. And that makes it river cleaning as a free service, meaning that we don't need to ask for funds anymore from the local municipality. Where we are at the moment, we have actually 5 projects funded by different kinds of parties. The one in Indonesia was the first one funded by the Coca-Cola Foundation and Betty of Ocean Initiative. In the Philippines, we're funded by a global port operator. In Bangladesh, by the Danish government. In India, by Huhtamäki Packaging Corporation. And in Ghana, by the UK Foreign Ministry. So these are the first 5 projects already operational. And the goal here is to take out 75% of all riverborne ocean plastics and turn it into a €1 billion circular economy that actually would be creating thousands of decent jobs in developing countries and turning the catastrophe into a revenue generating operation. Now you see there the figure of 2.5 billion. And that's what we've gathered. It takes as a capex in order to create 3 million tons of annual capacity for recycling the low values, which is the stuff that we actually have in the rivers mostly. It may sound like money, but then when I compare this to Sander's 392 million, it's just over 0.5% of the Just Transition Fund. And we will be able to stop 75% of all plastic pollution going into the oceans through rivers and create in excess of 300 million of income, 300 million worth of jobs, decent jobs for what now is the unofficial workforce who are collecting waste and getting paid in cash. Where these can be done, what we're looking for is, first of all, a dirty river. Second of all, sufficient amount of feedstock, because the unit has to be rather large to be financially sustainable. And that pretty well puts us into large cities. And then we, of course, always need a local partner. Thinking of the global setting of fair transition, the situation is, in our view, that the developed countries, first of all, you have consumer demand for doing things circular, doing the sustainable and responsible kind of business. And there is a will to pay a little premium for having your products made out of circular economy and not linear. On the other hand, the funds are missing from where the problem is in developing countries. So what this presents to organizations in developed countries is investment opportunities. These are businesses, sustainable raw materials, CSR, project possibilities, plastic credit opportunities, and for development banks and such, impact opportunities. Actual projects that create positive impact both for the environment and for the local labor force. 13 minutes, 30 seconds. I'm pretty much on time here. So I think that was what I had in mind.
Thank you very much, Anssi, for your very nice presentation and nicely fitting into time. What I like very much from your presentation is the initial idea that this is not technological issue. This is social and economical issue. And I think this is exactly the question which is in the core of fair transition, because we're dealing with human systems and any technologies will be taken and used it could be used in quite different ways. And the core question is how we could balance economy, environment, and equity in this transition. We will have the whole discussion later on. And now I would like to invite Müge Tuna, a network representative of Amfori in Turkey, who will tell us about their approach to just transition. Müge, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mihail, for giving the floors to me. Before starting, I would like to greet respectfully our valuable business people and participants. And please let me continue in English. In Turkish, even though my presentation has been prepared in English. Let me share my screen. Evet. Ben bugün aslında
Of course, I am going to work for Amforis. I like to talk about fair transition for the circular economy. I like to talk about how we are doing this as for implication. We are going to talk about the services of Amfori. We are going to do this together and how we are working for how we can do it better. We are going to give information about that. Let's talk about first M40. I have to give a quick identification. It was founded in Brussels. It is a global trade, global business platform. It is the mostly the enables organization to enhance human prosperity, use natural resources responsibly, and drive open trade globally. We call this trade with purpose. So we have lots of services for humanity. We have departments and to use natural resources. We have use a better service, and for the open trade globally, we do have advocacy department and work on that part. And when we take a look at all of this, this is our motto is that we call this trade with purpose. There we have some visions as M40, we have missions and also values. We can say that a world where all trade delivers social and environmental and economic benefits for everyone. And for that, leadership, collaboration, and excellent subjects, we give services on that part. We talked about BPI. BPI is one of our services. It was founded in 2013. It provides a comprehensive range of services that enable companies to drive focused environmental improvements in their supply chain. It helps the companies with mostly for their environmental ways. It creates opportunities, we can say. And BPI is one of the services of M40. It's the online system. All of our work for the factories or for the customers, they can just join us online. It's a very flexible system. Factory owners or customers can work on the environmental issue they want to work on. It has transportation helps, and mostly we have lots of partners and shareholders, and they have to be cooperative with them. If we put if they talking about every employee's ideas are taken, we can say that no one is leaving left behind after that. We have 11 principles. Some of those are creation of an environmental management system, water use, and the problems the wastewater brings, how we can fix this, the emissions to the air, and of course waste management is important, prevention of pollution and chemical management, major incident prevention and management, contaminated land, soil, and groundwater pollution prevention. Of course, the biodiversity and land use, and of course, environmental problems are one of the most important subjects. Why did we founded the BPI system? The manufacturers or our members for the BPI, when they get included to the system, they can monitor and calculate their environmental improvements. We can say that they can analyze the past situation and can do an analysis study, and after that in the future they can take the necessary actions. For every they can access to reports, training, and qualified service providers, just like trainers or consultants or inspectors. we give them opportunity to access. They can reduce their risk, and with that, they can increase their opportunity for their networking and cooperative working. This can work for all sectors. It includes every supply chains. It can go for all tiers. You can go to wherever you want to go in the sector or platform. In BPI, we have more than 600 members. The Amphore has more than 2,700 members, but just for BPI, we have more than 600 members. We have more than 12,000 procedures, and we are working on 30 countries. And with the help we are giving them, and support we are giving them, they can create their own solutions and agendas and the actions they want to take. We work on clothing, furniture, footwear, art craft. Every sector can get help from us. If what is BPI is not, let's talk about that. It is not a auditing system or a certification scheme for our manufacturer at the end of their, as we can say, in the end of their process. There is no certification. It is mostly about developing themselves. It's not a label for products or an accreditation system. It is a circular approach that can help with the improvement and development for our manufacturers. As you all know, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, when they published in 2015, as M40, we became one of the first international company that had their own vision for 2030. For 16 and 17, clean water and climate change actions and collaboration goals become really important for us. What did we do? Mostly for climate change and for our environmental performance. We created a long-term strategy for 5 years. We start this in 2020 and 2021, and we have a key component in our EU policy agenda. And of course, we did an important part of an environmental digital strategy. One of the priorities we created, I talked about when did we created, I talked about the BPI has been founded in 2013. In end of 2022, with the Green Deal, everything, we are going to integrate everything about the Green Deal, and we'll create the 2.0 version of BPI. I want to talk about BPI very shortly. We have 4 phases for our, we can say, for our BPI system. We have to first create a mapping for the supply chain. After that, the analysis of the supply chain, and we start our application in this analysis mode. And of course, the improvement of activities, and after that, the monitoring of the activities. What are we doing on this part? We have an online platform. In our online platform, not just the main manufacturers are not added. They can also add their own suppliers or secondary suppliers, because they have to enter some data because of the analysis. But they can help. We want them to get help from their suppliers to enter their data also. They have to create their mapping, they have to do their analysis. After all of this are done, we have an online platform. You can see it from everywhere. We have the steps. Every study in our platform can be monitored from lots of different brands. Of course, we are going to talk about and the most important part is the analysis. We have a self-assessment questions. We have a question sheet for that. in this survey, we need the last 3 years data. We talk about water consumption, electrical consumption. We were asked about what I have been doing for the last 3 years. When the data they gathered are submitted, platform automatically creates a systematical graphic with the given data. It could be energy consumption or waste management. It gives help with the improvements. If they have any gaps, system helps with them automatically on that part and gives this data analysis to our manufacturer or their suppliers. Then after that, shareholder cooperation starts for brands or universities, for manufacturers. If they want to add someone to the system, they always think about how we can improve this. This factor needs, they need consultancy or inspection services. This factor needs that, or it needs a broadened training, and they make their decision on that part. Of course, My Climate is one of our partners since 2019. With its help, we can help them. We can help our customers and manufacturers to help with the calculating with their carbon. How we are giving them advice on and mentorship on how they can get better for their carbon emissions and decrease their carbon emissions. And of course, we have improvement activities and we give decisions on that part. Of course, I have to talk about this. It could be improvement phase, it could be BPI assessment or topical training. Sorry. Everything can be happened. It could be supply chain chemical management model, SCCM. It is for the brand and the manufacturer to think about. Or let's say that it's a statistical data analysis come out very greatly and there's no other for taking a look at the activities, then you can just go for the monitoring. We have a training, topical training. All of our systems manufacturers can join this free of charge. We have the track and monitor progress. For brands, they have to do this track and monitoring to make this new processes to be more circular. If it is not tracked, it won't improve, and we all know about that. That's why we give a chance to them to calculate and inspect and audit themselves. All in on this circle, the things we want from our manufacturer as a mandatory, they have to create environmental management systems. They have to create leadership and commitment. They have to give the initial environmental reviews. And they have to, of course, track and monitor. This is one of our conditions. While all of these are happening, we have lots of new tools. We have some service providers. As I talked about, we have a platform. We have, of course, guides and handbooks. We have created and translated these guides and handbooks for 14 different languages.
Mihail, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Muge. And that was really exciting presentation because it pretty much go in line with what we heard previously. And it look on how we do these things, how we focus on value chains and how we turn garbage into something valuable. So thank you very much for this presentation, and we will continue with questions after the session. But now I would like to invite Dr. Baran Alp Unju from Istanbul Planning Agency Institute, who will talk about other aspects of fair transition. Dr. Baran, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mihail. Hello. Actually, I'm going to use my English version of my slides, but continue speaking in Turkish. So first, I'm going to share my slides. Tekrar merhaba.
Hello again. I am a political sociologist. I am working for the climate change. I work on the climate subjects and political subject. In this presentation, I want to talk about more terminological way to handle this. I will talk about what created the foundations of it. I'll talk about the climate justice and intersections and interactions. These are things we can use together. I'll talk about this, and after we are doing this and putting them into force, while we're trying to handle the just transition, there's something we have to always talk about. We have some things we have to discuss together, and I will try to talk about them briefly. First of all, climate change, the climate crisis is a really big problem. It is one of the greatest and biggest crisis we are currently seeing, and it creates a more catastrophic event, more socially with the pandemic. As you all know, the global average temperature in the world has increased for 1.2. And of course, there has some social, economic, and political reasons and outcomes. We are talking about crisis that creates, it's not just about ecological waste, it also creates problems for other areas too. It affects the relationships. And of course, it creates the injustice too. There's injustices on that part. So that's why the outcomes and results are mostly injustice too. It is something like an intersectoral system. We need the conflict of togetherness. We are talking about climate justice. If we work together, I want to talk about this, the dimensions of this justice. I like to talk about. First of all, is the recognition. It could be for ethnicity, language, gender, classifications, all of these other societies. They have to come. We have to identify and recognize all of these different societies, and they have to be accepted by social to help them with the other ecological and economical problems. As distribution, we can say that every service and access to all of this, access to the service, how much is given, or how much opportunity that is given. When we talk about economic crisis, of course, the rights and opportunities and cost, if distributed to the diversified groups equally. And the third one is the procedural and participation. Participation is the most important thing. It is mostly about, if we want to talk about for the current political mechanisms, if the groups that are not representative enough, how much they can participate for the control mechanisms or decision mechanisms. And if they can't, it creates the injusticeness on this part. So that's why there is a problem with the justice of participation. If we have to talk how much they can talk about themselves, how can they be impact on the decisions, or what are their recommendations or needs, and for the is it hurt from decision making processes? There's a process for them to be joined as a decision making process? When we talk about this, in the three dimensions we are talking about, the groups that don't, they're on the less represented side, they have injusticeness. We have a great long list. We can talk about poor, or elderly, refugees, women's, children's, and the minorities of religion and ethnical levels. And of course, it changes to the conditions and terms and status. It can change. Different groups can be disadvantages on the different parts. When we take a look at this, what the climate justice wins in the climate justice, we are talking about the climate change periodical levels, and we can see that injustices are really big, and while we can try to see the positiveness, but most majority uh, sorry, I couldn't work. To help with lessen the carbon, even if they have zero impact on this crisis, they always handle the problems of the catastrophic levels of impact from this crisis. They take the impact more. There's lots of disadvantages they have, and the climate change results and outcomes. It deepens these injustices and creates new injustices too. And the climate justice says that we can take steps for the climate change, but they can't create a just impact. We, there's, we can create a sea wall if there's a sea level increase is happening. But while doing this, lots of people can lose their employment, or they can just lose their home. That's why while we're creating climate policies, we have to think about the justice system. These are all known by us. It is mostly to make you remember. This is foundation principles. When we take a look at this, how we can change this, how we can transition from this. Let's say that in our toolbox, we have lots of tools and different models of tools. Just transition is something that makes them come together. It is mostly like an umbrella. We can think about it like that. When we put every one of them to any process, first thing is the leaving behind the fossil fuels behind and using renewable energy or green energy. We have transition to renewable energy, but we have to think about justice for that too. We talk about the crossouts. The, the justice has different dimensions. It is the recognition, distribution, and participations are not different from each other that much or separated from each other. Using this, we can say that at the start of this, the disadvantaged group has to be accepted as their disadvantage in the position of disadvantage. But who's going to do this? These are still unanswered questions. The recognition is really important. But when we are going to call the disadvantaged groups to a table, how we can do the criteria to see if they are in the position of disadvantage? It's not just, as we talked about, it's not ecological, or it's not just economical, as the just transition says that it is a more circular economy. The social part of this is really important. We have to remember that when we are thinking about the social aspect of it. Social policies in the at the same time, when they are put it on, when they're published economical ways, yeah, you have to work in harmony, and it is another differentiated study. There's we talk about 9 limits of world, and we're currently exceeding those limits. This is something we call biophysical limits, we say, and social limits. This is a set that brings them together in the international area. This criteria sets are things we can use. They take a look at the 109 countries in the world, and they try to look at what these goals are moving on. We talk when we take a look at the biophysical levels, but about the planet's limits, there has been no improvement. Best criteria we have is the SDGs. But think about this SDGs more. We need to find the social politicals that with the limitations. We have to use definitions like comfortable life or comfortable living should we take a look at. Maybe creating a different type of meaning is really important. This 9 limits we are talking about is exceeded very fast pace, and we are going in a very bad situation. We can talk about lots of different dimensions: regional, local, global, continental. We have we are talking about there's a just transition effort it has been doing for all of the national and local ways. Most countries are doing this with their national policies. With locals, the cities are currently active on that part. They try to create their own national beyond networks. But let's say that there's a climate action that's going to happen in a city, just transition policy that will be born from it for nation. It has to be with the actors from if they're going to do a difference in the local way, they need actors from national, regional, global actors. The scales are not differentiated or separated. They have to work together. After that, there's spaces, there's cities, rural, to creating a just transition in the city, creating comfortable and livable and socially acceptable jobs. You can create employment there, but cities are not just for themselves. There's also rural waste they need as for food or maybe for water. While working on the city, they have to take a look at the rural areas too, because if you take out something else, it can create a separability. Adaptation and mitigation. It is mostly about the climate change adaptation, and of course the climate change mitigation actions. As we can say about other ecological work, they have to be in harmony together. The economical just transition, we can take a look at the climate change mitigation and adjustment of this policies is important, and these processes are still going on, and climate change affects as affect us, as affect everyone. As we were talking about disadvantaged groups, we don't have to take them as a static group or monetary groups. They could be different groups, or they could have gender groups. These disadvantages can be come against each other. Poverty, being a woman, or having a different ethnical identity. It is a different identities person can have. That person that has these two disadvantages identity is something that we will talk about, this intersectionality. For one disadvantageous group, they don't face injustice at the same face in the same levels. Some of them can have excessive levels of injustice can be seen for some of them. The, we were trying to work about the just improvement or circular economy. We have lots of alternatives, and we have lots of approaches that can help with the as for the circular economy. When you use it more and use it more, it becomes something that is in English called catch all, something like everyone and puts their own meaning on
Dr.
that word.
Baran, you have 1 minute to
And
finish, please.
and with that, to first of all, these meanings, terminologies, we start using them for each other. And what we're trying to say, I will talk about the model. We don't have any idea on that part. When we talk about the circular economy, against the linear economy, it is different. Like when we are using the raw material that we process to be a product, we just return it with a cycling and maybe with repairing to use that raw material again in a circular loop. When we are going for renewable energy, as for persons that working for the fossil fuels, that's why creating a socially accepted green jobs is important. Circular economy, when we talk about this kind of growth and improvement and development, when we talk about the growth, the development and growth meaning is different. We are currently seeing lesser growth, but just transition doesn't say anything about growth. Of course, they say that they will, they are saying that they will create more green and stable jobs, but it doesn't mean that they have to increase the employment, and the growth is really a problem. This decision policies for growth have to work on this, and we have to see it like that as well. For these terminologies, if we don't put parameters on this part, and if we don't discuss it together, they can become inconsistent, and there won't be anything to say. Let's say it one last stick. This also a technological modernism, we say. Technology is used to get past some things with lots of different approaches. We need lots of importance for technical innovations. Of course, it is true, but it is not enough. Or when we take a look at the geoengineering, technology can have a support role, but it can't have the main role. We have to look at the paradigm of the social, economical, and environmental change.
Thank you very much for very profound presentation. And I think you remind us very important thing, that we should look on more granular analysis when we go forward, because it's quite easy to say, okay, circular economy, but it's when we're going forward, it's much more question how we do it rather than what we do. We are pretty much clear what we would like to do in circular economy, but how we do it, it's quite important. And then we are looking on all these complex technological and human interactions. We should look on how this combination of societal drivers and societal factors, how they work together with local conditions. And I think Sander addressed it quite nicely in his presentation when he looked on different regions, this very interesting map of Europe with different regions who are who are pretty heavy on fossil fuels, who are heavy on heavy industries, and who are using both of them. And what Ansi was talking about when he looked on this cycle and what are the kind of products. And that's a tool which Muge showed us. So thank you very much for reminding us about this combination of societal drivers, local conditions, and individual vulnerabilities. Now we are going to discussion, and we have something like 15 minutes for discussions. I have 3 questions to all our panel members. And first question is, how to ensure the proper mix of economy, environment, and equity cohesion in fair transition? Because we are talking about circular economy, and this is economy, but how we should factor in environment, how we make sure that these things are not exacerbate existing inequalities. That was very clear in Ansi's presentation when he showed initial slides of this informal waste processing in, I think it was Jakarta. And that's what you could also see in Istanbul and many other Turkish cities. So how this could work together. Second, how we could partner for fair transition. We have a lot of actors, and many of you told about involvement of youth, involvement of this is business thing, but also about other partners, how we ensure no action without representation. And last but not least, how to ensure that it's work for everyone, how to ensure that no one left behind. So that's my 3 overarching questions. And I have a couple of questions coming from audience, and I remind that you could submit your questions and we use it. And one question, and actually 2 questions, which are going, I think, to Sandra presentation. What is the Turkey position in this plan for member states? And second, this will not change overnight. And now European Commission consider nuclear as a low carbon. So what do you think about this? I think this question goes mostly to Sander.
Thank you. So I can address these 2 questions. Do you then also want me to address your other 3 questions?
Yes, please choose whatever is closest to your presentation.
Okay, then I do your 3 questions, and then I come to these 2 questions from the audience. So with regard to, let's say, the balance, or or the combination of economy, environment, equity in the European Union, we have a very, very strong tradition on a very strict environmental policy. The EU is definitely a leader on that. This is not new. We have been doing things for the circular economy for many years as well. What the European Green Deal now does is to really put these environmental goals at the center of an economic strategy, because the European Green Deal is the #1 political priority of the European Commission. and it is an economic strategy. So what the model behind it basically is that we put ambitious but realistic targets. So a climate neutral economy in 2050, but also other targets linked to waste recycling, to greenhouse gas emission reduction, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and other things, biodiversity as well. So we have these targets, which are accepted by all member states, and they are enshrined in law. So they're binding. And then we mobilize all of our policy instruments to these targets, which includes legislation, which includes also help in capacity building, but which includes also investment. So there are unprecedented amounts ready to be invested in the circular economy and in climate policy as well. When it then comes to equity, this is what I try to focus on in my presentation on the Just Transition Fund, because there, what we really do is not only make sure that we have investments to achieve the goals, but also that we have investments to help those that will have the negative impact, because the impacts will be different across the EU depending on the regions. So the equity there is to make sure no one is left behind, but that also means that everyone has the chance to benefit from the transition, because overall it is a positive story for both economy and people, especially in a place like Europe, which is heavily dependent, and we see this today very much so, heavily dependent on import of all kinds of resources. So this green economy is our main economic strategy, and it needs to be a success for everyone, and the Just Transition Fund tries to help doing that. Partnership is a central principle and has been the case also in, for instance, the EU funds. It means also going towards what you called a more granular approach, because the Just Transition Fund, for instance, really start from the bottom up. It is a place-based approach. It is about getting all the stakeholders, all the partners around the table to decide on what is the future vision of their territory and how we can help achieve that. Who are these stakeholders? I mean, I refer back to also what the colleague of the ILO has said about the social dialogue. This is, of course, very much enshrined in everything that we do. So the economic and social partners, but also local and regional authorities and mayors, all kinds of, I mean, the regions themselves, you really want them to take ownership of the transition. And then as well, civil society, which includes youth as well. Then maybe, yeah, so how to ensure no one is left behind? I think I tackled this already, so I will not go into it now. Turkey is, of course, not one of the EU member states. So when it comes to the Just Transition Fund specifically, it is only available for EU member states. Of course, you know, and this is not something I work directly on myself. You know that Turkey is one of our partner countries. So there are a lot of activities done by the colleagues in DG NEAR on Turkey as well. We have several initiatives running with regard to coal regions, where some of the Eastern Partnership member states, Eastern Partnership countries are also involved. I know that we also do things in relation to the just transition in the steel sector in Turkey, but I don't know the details of these activities myself, so I will not go into details. Then there was a question on nuclear. So what the European Commission proposed was not to say that nuclear is sustainable by itself. I mean, in the taxonomy, the EU taxonomy is a classification of financial activities. And the proposal of the European Commission was to say that nuclear energy under very, very strict conditions can in some cases be considered as sustainable. These conditions are very important. It's not all nuclear. But other than that, it is just a classification of financial activities. It has no impacts on what the EU funds will fund, for instance. So all the cohesion policy funds, for instance, will never be spent on nuclear energy. This has always been excluded, and the taxonomy discussion does not change this at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sander, for very profound elaboration. And we have more questions, and I think this go to more to Ansi. And the question is about microplastic pollution and water biomes in the world. And this increase in microplastic in water seriously threaten the world ecosystems. Could you please elaborate about the preclusion and current position? And generally, if you could address these three overarching questions. Ansi, please.
Right. On the microplastics, that's something that we deal with, but partly indirectly, in that most of the microplastics are created in the ocean once macroplastics end up in the ocean and are facing sun and the waves. They turn into microplastics. What we as a company are actually trying to do is collect the macroplastics before they become microplastics. Our technology at the moment does not address microplastics that are coming from, for example, washing clothes and ending up in the wastewater. So our systems do not catch that, but we prevent microplastics by stopping macroplastics. As on the equity, economic, and environment, I think that connects very much to partnering, because what we find is that we kind of we are in 7 different businesses, none of which is profitable on its own. So without partnering, we don't actually exist, because it starts from having non-functioning waste management systems, which are based on unofficial jobs. So we partner with development organizations to create official jobs, which in effect creates functioning waste management systems. Without those, the recycling business doesn't make sense. Then we cooperate with normal funders, investments, because they become possible once the entire system exists. And in that way, we also partner with brands who want to have their supply chains work sustainably, even in developing countries. So they're willing to chip in a little, not the whole system, obviously, but the little that they can help in the collection makes it possible to create feedstock that then makes industry possible. And we cooperate with Western consumers who are willing to buy products that are produced sustainably. So I think partnering is very, very much what we do. We collect the equity, the economics, and the environment together, because there are different parties that are willing to fund any one of these. And only together does the solution actually work. As in not leaving anybody behind, we tend to find this a very interesting question, because the moment money starts being made in any particular economy where we're working, there are heavy demands on leaving it to that particular country. And from our perspective, there may be other countries that have no solution, no system, and are heavily polluting the oceans. So how do we equally distribute the funds that are being made? We see it from the global perspective, but this is an ongoing debate, whether it should be any particular country where the value added is created, or should it be spread evenly to solve a global problem? And we don't really have a full answer to that. But I think we should look at this as a global question.
Thank you very much for your perspective, Ansi. And I have a question to Müge. Could you provide a little bit more details how to become a member of your Amfori platform, and what are the conditions?
Tabii.
Of course, to become a member from Amfori, mostly the purchase customer, it could be brands or other companies, not manufacturers. The retailers, purchase.
Sonra çeşitli, yani satın almak istedikleri.
After they become a member of Amfori, they have choose decision to make or choosing. They can take BCI, or maybe they can just buy BPI, or other services. When our brands become our members, they want to add their supply chain to our system. They don't become the suppliers of this brands are not just become their own members. They get invited from our member brands. They have their own KPIs, and they have to try. They give promises to become we work with the harmony with this system.
Thank you very much, Muge. And I have two questions in pipeline and only 2 minutes to finish. So I will ask this question to Baran and Bahadir, please 1 minute each. And I think that relates to both of you. One question is, what is your opinion on transformation of the current position of women in society who are considered among the vulnerable group, and how it's related to fair transformation process? And second related question, green mental revolution is needed to move to a circular economy. How we could help people to develop this green mindset? Please, Dr. Baran, 1 minute for you, and then to Bahadir.
Okay, thank you. First of all, yes, women are one of the most vulnerable groups in almost in all contexts, right? We know that their education level is in most parts of the world, including Turkey, is lower. They have lower incomes and they work informally. And this is actually not only specific to women, but also to all those other groups who are working in the informal sector. That's one of the big questions that we should answer. How can we create some kind of create decent jobs and so on when we do this just transition, where a large portion of the economy is informal? And it's again women who are being and they constitute the biggest sections of those informal sectors in the economy. So it's a tough question, but for sure this should be taken into consideration, that informality and so on. And
thank
for
you
the
very
second
much.
Part, oh, okay, sorry.
We ran out of time, and
okay.
I give 1 minute to Bahadir to talk about this.
Okay.
Thank you, Mikhail. Dr. Baran has indicated comprehensively about the disadvantaged groups and the role of women. I'd like to discuss more at the policy level, and we have to, of course, take into consideration, as other colleagues have already mentioned, that disadvantaged groups are disproportionately, affected by the climate crisis, and there's many negative effects that has been affecting them disproportionately. This includes loss of work productivity, it includes a loss of income sources, and in the worst cases, climate migration or forced displacement. At the regional and international levels, we have to take this into consideration as well, and these effects on economic conditions such as increased informal employment, that's again already been mentioned, but making it more difficult to ensure decent jobs are there for all, basically. As such, the COP26 Just Transition Declaration actually requires all member states to take these into account, and especially the disadvantaged groups. However they may be defined, this may vary from country to country. But what is important is that this is central to the economic and social justice through the development of encompassing policies, such as active labor market policies, such as, I have some notes here as well, skill gap analysis, occupational safety and health measures, and also social protection measures that all need to be taken into consideration while looking at social justice, the role of women, and disadvantaged groups. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bahadir. And I should conclude this session and thank all our participants for very profound presentations. My main takeaway from this session is that we are dealing with complex systems and we cannot predict from the start. We cannot chart the way to go forward. The only way to go forward in this complex system is to probe, sense, and act. And I thank all participants for sharing their opinions, sharing their experience, because that's how we sense and how we make sense of very different probes and experiments and how we could act and go forward. Thank you very much. I conclude this session. And I pass the floor back to Banu. Banu, please, the floor is yours.
Sayın Peri, Sayın Hepert.
Thank you, esteemed Sanders, esteemed Mikola, esteemed Tuna, and esteemed Tuncu. It was a great session. Thank you for your great contributions. For as a question that has been given, if there will be records will be given, as we talked about at the start of our week, I can say next week you can see the YouTube channels. Our second session will start at 11 past 45. Thank you.
Sırada günün ikinci
Second is the second session for today, was about the workplace of adaptation of the green transition. Our session moderator from UNDP, specialist Mihail Pelihal from International Emre Dönmez, and Anna Rodaski, and of course UNDP Turkey's office from the portfolio project coordinator Tuğçe Suud will be with us. I'd like to give the stage to Mihail.
Thank you very much, Banu, for introduction. And during this session, we will talk about labor force and green transition. And there are a lot of concerns how green transition affect working people, and especially different groups of working people. We will have 3 presentations, and then we will have discussion. And I remind you that you could submit your questions through the application which shared by conference organizers. Our first presenter is Emre Dönmez, Business Development Specialist of International Labour Organization. Emre, please, the floor is yours.
Teşekkürler Mihail.
Thank you, Mihail. I have a presentation. First, I want to show it to you. I think you can see my presentation. My name is Emre Dönmez. I'm currently working for the Uluslararası Workforce. I will talk about, there was lots of talk about this. I want to make it more, how can I say, make it more intangible. We want to talk about, is it green works or making the works more green? I want to talk about the green works, green jobs. When we talk about the more tangible ways about the green jobs, when we take a look at, I think that we have to see it with more different ways. We have been working on this very, very much. We have a study has been published in 2018. I will show you some data. All about, we are talk about the work jobs and green transition in the, of course, for the transitions. There is currently 1.2 billion of works is the 4% mostly. Most of this work, it's more about the environmental friendly. It could be tourism or forestry. There's millions or billions of people are working on these fields or trying to do their job. When we take a look at it, we can see that these kind of jobs are currently in a risk. Then we will take a look at this. And we have lots of natural and human-made disasters. In last year, in the Sound cities, there was lots of forest fire. It was because of the climate change, it said that, and maybe it's really because of that. Every year, 23 million loss of jobs happened. Maybe this doesn't mean anything for you, but in Turkey, current working peoples are 28 million from public and private employees. There's 28 million of workforce, and lots of people losing their jobs every year. There's some discussions and numbers in the report. Because of climate change, there has been an increase in temperature globally, but the increase in temperature can be more than normal. We can say that 38 degrees of temperature that the human body can handle while working. So that's why lots of employment can be lost, maybe for the farming or for cultivation or for construction. Of course, excessive hunting creates a lot of problems too. 85 million of jobs can be lost because of the excessive hunting and excessive fishing. if the green transitions become successful, if we can see an increase. 24 million new jobs can be created for this job, and 6 million jobs can be lost in the green transition. When we take at the farming areas, it is not open wide. When we talk about sustainable cultivations for 2030, 150 million of jobs can be lost. We have talked about this too. This employment losses and gains can change. Well, Europe can be seen employment increase. These are global numbers I'm giving. We take a look at the circular economy. 6 million new jobs should be created. And in mining, from 50 million, and for other work jobs can be lost lots of jobs and employment. It is mostly pre-pandemic report. When we put the pandemic on the surface, these numbers can be changed and can be more negative. It is easy to understand that. So as easily we can say that everything is becoming one. Even if there's some positive waves, there's lots of negative things in the numbers we can see. We can say that it creates a positive effect. When we take a look at for the grant transition to make it more just, we can see green jobs importance in here, and for employment to become more hard and more big get increased. I want to talk about the green jobs morely. It is mostly for it protects biodiversity and environmental ways. It tries to take away, tries not use any applications that may harm the environmental ways. Tries to help with the zero carbon goals. Try to minimize the effect on the environment. It's really great, broadened concept. There's technicians, workers, 3 persons that do the installation of the wind farms, or as we can see, people that are working on the organic farming and cultivation. There is environmental injuries of forest workers. When we can think about persons that do lots of works. They were here. When we take a look at this, what does this mean? Does this a green job? We see 2 people. One of them is a kid, maybe they're a son and father. One of them a renewable worker. It is mostly think about the paper collector or waste collector. They collecting they take metal pieces or paper from there and go to the renewable factories. They don't use any motorized vehicles. They really give contribution to the renewable and green economy, but there is child labor, and they are mostly, we can see that there's really hard for them, and there is no social security. It can be seen that as a green job because it gives green work or lots of things, but can we say it like that? I think they don't get much paid. Is he safe while doing it? We don't know how the foundation of the usage is not great. We can see lots of news about that. In the construction sector, usage, the heating is really great, and for isolation is important, and he's really doing a critical work. But can we say it's a green job? of course, we talk about organic farming and cultivation from cotton fields. In the coming times, there will be more sustainable investment. But does the workforce in the farming area will change after this investment? There is nearly 150,000 child workers in the Turkey. Lots of young age children working for the cotton fields. We can say they are organic cotton, but if the children are working, can we say it's a green job? You can see there's no electrical or water there. There's mud, or they can be create a flood in a little rain. You can see that we can say that they are the smallest social economic groups. There's also, of course, refugee workers on that part. We can be say a green job also. It's a really question.
2008 yılında ILO'nun ve Birleşmiş Milletler Çevre Programı'nın hazırladığı rapor var.
There's a report that has been created. It says that green jobs, if they're going to be sustainable, you have to be great for the humans too.
Bu raporun altını çok sarlı bir şekilde çiziyor. Mutlaka insana yakışır işler olması gerekiyor ki o işe yeşil işler diyelim. Peki insana yakışır iş nedir?
What is the job that be great for humans? Let's put some weight on that. It has to give great prices and good prices. It's not. It has to be social security, giving access to the medical life. When they come to the age of 50, they have to be retired. It's a real critical problems. Lots of people are living, losing their lives in Turkey because of the work they're doing. To make a human available jobs, it's important to work on that. For the work, they have a say on it, and they have to be in the manufacturing part. Maybe it's like to work from the labor, from the help of the laborers. But Turkey is currently not doing their best on that part. Only 40% is currently working with the great works, more human compatible works. When we talk about, we can see there's lots of workforce coal corporations in Finland with 75%. This is most, the persons have to try to protect their rights. We are talking about the women coming to the joint force or the things, the child work labors are really big, and normally child working under the age of 18 is wrong and it is illegal. They have to be human applicable and human usable works. Everything is changed, and with that we really limited the jobs that can be classified as green work. We can see we have a woman worker here. I can say it is a green work, but can we see it is like this? Is she working with, she has a barret, but is the only risk that can be created for the job safety can be handled with just a barret? Does she get enough payment or wage? Maybe she's intern and doesn't get any wage. It can create different things. Let's try to work on it more. We have a hostess here for the, it is one of the, as you all know, the airway travel is one of the biggest sectors in the world. You can see there's a recyclable worker too. What's one of them is green jobs, we can say. We talk about this. We have drivers from the autobus drivers, but we can't say that which one of them is the green works. And we have to let's take a look at the manufacturing part about how much green is this. One of the sectors. Okay. When we take a look at the truck, I think this truck doesn't work with electricity, it uses fossil fuels. This turbine installations use this kind of much of this trucks, but when we take a look at the supply chains, we see a solar panel, and you see the materials in the panel. It is something like a steel thing that has critical materials and things we use. Can we say that how much solar panel is the most green? When I like to collect all of this, I'm saying green job is a context that we have been using very much and easily, but we currently don't know what is the things we say. It is not just about environmental, green jobs are not just about the environmental protection, but mostly about the work. We have to work on that. We can see there's some, we can say the brown works can be seen as, can work as green jobs, but green jobs that has been seen as green jobs can be worked like a brown jobs. Maybe hybrid cars can be seen as brown jobs. So that's why it creates a different way, because for these businesses, they have to take, they try to paint it to just the green. They don't exactly make the job green. I think it is enough for the start. We can continue after that. Thank you for giving me time to speech. Stage is yours, Mihail.
Thank you very much, Emre, and thank you very much for this very profound exploration of different shades of green. My quite important takeaway from your presentation is that it's not just yes and no, is it green or not green, but we should look on different elements of green jobs, which include decent job and environmental impact of job. And our next speaker is Anna Raudaskowski from Ethica Consultancy in Finland, and she will present us some approaches and some lessons learned from Finland. Anna, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So during the next 15 minutes, I will provide you a snapshot of industries, education sector, and public sector in terms of green transition and what's happening in terms of skills, competencies, and mindset. Just a couple of words about myself and my company, just to put everything that I will be talking about in context. So we've been running Ethica, a circular economy consultancy and a consultancy for sustainable business development for 9 years now. Here you can see a couple of our publications, but we work across different sectors and provide them with circular solutions, SDG, environmental sustainability business development plans, and also roadmaps. This here is our mission. So we truly try to inspire and guide entire industries to succeed in a regenerative and circular future. And I believe that circular economy as such is a kind of toolkit to to kind of succeed and start building a regenerative, restorative and regenerative world. And our service portfolio, regenerative growth strategies, circular service and product concepts, and also sustainable business development plans. Those are the things that we do with and work with our clients across different sectors and also public authorities. Just a couple of references, one from construction, estates and facility and management sector, Finnish pension provider, and we work with them to create the kind of circular guidelines for their constructions and estates maintenance projects. The other example from textile sector, where we work with a Finnish company to really understand what their circular opportunities in terms of the product development and service development were. But let's start from the education sector. So what's happening in Finland? Sitra, which is the Finnish Innovation Fund, has been instrumental in kind of pulling together different initiatives, projects and materials, and also providing funding for different educational institutions to start talking about circular economy, kind of environmental topics, and providing that platform and sort of understanding that, okay, this is where what we should address from the elementary school. What you can see here is a Welcome to My Play 2050, and this is targeted at upper secondary school pupils. So in the form of game, it teaches you about future and climate change topics. Here you can see another example, and this is basically for high school students. Welcome to the circular classroom. And these are obviously, because these are in English, I highly recommend you to familiarize yourselves with these materials. They're very interactive. They're very kind of use the rules of gamification, and they're very visual. So I believe that these are very inspirational for students and also for their teachers to learn and understand more about environmental issues. We at Ethica, a couple of months ago, we wrote a report to the Association of Nordic Engineers, and they wanted to explore how science, technology, engineering, and maths students are equipped with circularity, understanding, knowledge, and competencies. You can find this report online. It's a public report. And what we did at the report was we created this circular economy kind of competence framework, and you can see a visualization of that framework here. And briefly exploring the framework, we can say that we should have these what we call T-shaped professionals in the future. So we should be teaching through these three different layers. So one is kind of awareness and mindset. So how we view the world, how we see the world, and do we understand how ecosystems actually work? So these massive, gigantic topics about planetary boundaries, but these are very important sort of cornerstones when we start building other skills and competencies. So the second layer then is technical and analytical skills. And here you can see these different competencies. So in our view, what we presented in the report is that STEM professionals should have sufficient understanding of circular product design strategies, which is the competence number 1, but also about circular business models, which is competence number 2. And then thirdly, they should understand about system management and digital solutions. And then, as you can see on the right-hand side, there are cross-cutting skills, which are also relevant. And then third layer would be these kind of a deep knowledge, deep expertise of different disciplinaries. So having that specialization in certain topics. Let's have a look at what industries are doing. And just to remind ourselves that when we talk about emissions, the scope 3 emissions, they form the biggest portion of companies' carbon footprint. So it's roughly around 70 to 90% when we talk about the entire company operations, from upstream supply chain activities all the way to downstream to use and end of use. So these two are the biggest generator of emissions. And therefore, it means that we really need circular solutions to tackle these climate topics. So we need to have that circular toolkit to better be in position to decrease our emissions. So what different industries have done, and once again, you can see different sectors coming together. So this is a chemical industry, and they created this, what they call playbook. So sustainable and circular business models for the chemical industry. And it's been done in collaboration with Business Finland and Accenture. And they also have a very good representation of different companies. So there are workshops when they drafting these workbooks, and they have the kind of company's voice in order to make sure that the content is relevant. But these are very hands-on playbooks. They're very kind of practical and try to provide in a concise and compact form the tools that companies could start making and start their circular journey. Another playbook is for the manufacturing sector. So there we have machinery and equipment, marine industry, energy and transportation. And also it's not just large companies that are sort of contributing to this green transition, but it's very much these Finnish SMEs as well. And as you can see in this playbook, they provided a number of different tools for companies where they can start assessing their current state and then starting to plan the steps towards circularity. Another source of information that I highly recommend for you is the Nordic collaboration, which is called Circuit Norden. You can find lots of different workbooks, templates and tools online. And here you can see some of them. So circularity assessment tool, you can, as a company, you can immediately start kind of filling out the Excel sheet to better understand where you are at the moment and where the biggest opportunities lie. Or whether we talk about ecosystem mapping, because you do need those partners in order to transition towards circularity. And then obviously the kind of end user, how do you create best customer value? How do you create that very lucrative offering in terms of product and services? Then this is another fantastic example of training program, and this is an online college for regenerative farming. So as we know that farming contributes a lot to CO2 emissions, and there needs to be a real transition in terms of farming practices. So this is something that has been created together with farmers. It has very nice kind of modules and very kind of bite-sized learning programs for farmers across Finland. And this is very much a kind of hands-on program. It's called Eco Design Sprint. And this is basically to any company that wishes to kind of kick off the circular journey. Eco Design Sprint is something that we created together with Design for Finland. And what is really interesting about this program is that there's kind of a design agency together with the circular economy coach, and they both, it's kind of one-to-one basis, and they're both coaching the company. And for the company, it really provides an opportunity to increase their knowledge and understanding of circular solutions, but also they can immediately start improving and sort of addressing their current products and services, how to start improving and further developing those. So it's very much hands-on program, 3 very intensive workshop days, and then you can get a kind of a product or service concept at the end of it. So it kind of paves the way for your circular transition. And then last, but definitely not least, a couple of examples of public sector. So what public sector is doing, on top left-hand corner, you can see public procurement. So we created this center in Finland because obviously public procurement plays a big role when kind of purchasing goods and services from private sector. And if those circularity criteria is not embedded there, then obviously it's not creating that sufficient pull through public procurement. So this basically teaches and provides best case practices examples on how to develop your own criteria. Then we have lots of different ministries. We have Finnish textile and fashion sector. And of course, let's not forget about EU taxonomy, which comes into force this year and starts really directing funding for green innovation. And then just to wrap up, I would also like to highlight the power of inspiring forerunners, these inspiring companies that have already created something new, that have seen something that didn't exist there, but took the risk and created circular solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anne, for very interesting presentation with Finnish journey into circular economy. And I like very much all the elements of your presentation, and especially how you combine business perspective with skills development and building mindset for this. And now we are going to our third presenter, Tuğçe Söğüt, who is the resilience advisor of UNDP Turkey dealing with Syrian portfolio green energy project. And she will tell us how the project managed to combine green transition elements, green energy elements with social cohesion, working in very hard situation of Syrian refugees portfolio. Tuğçe, please, the floor is yours.
Teşekkür ediyorum. Öncelikle
thank you. I'd like to say welcome and good day, everyone. I will have a presentation too. Let me first open up for you. Okay. Hello, everyone. Firstly, I'm going to talk morely on the part of, with the help of the Korean government's support and with the Forestry Ministry of Turkey, I want to talk about, we tried to create a project for the Syrian or homeowners, landowners employment increasing rate. I like to talk about the regional refugee and resilience plan as in the recent years, in 2021 and 2022, the shareholders and the partners of this program with the programs they created for this kind of refugee problems and for Syrian crisis. They try to, with the humanitarian approaches and help, and take a look at it. They try to create projects, and in this concept, as the United Nations Development Plan for the UNHCR, we are working with a co-coordination, and currently for Syrians and for Turkish people, it's a project for them, and of course for the side IP, we have sustainable development plans. We are taking a look at all of them, and in that concept, our project is the main purpose of our project. In Turkey, everyone, they try to give a skill certification and increase their certification. We were talking about we want 1,000 people, and 25% or more than it should be for women. So we have lots of cities of Hatay in Konya. We're going to start giving our trainings, and of course, on Istanbul has become become a part of our project, like public sectors, and of course, special institutions and private institutions working on this project. Mostly, it's maybe for our main purpose main subject is our employment, creating SDKs, international SDKs, and lots of other things. And of course, universities is important for our project. For our project, first we start with the shareholder analysis. Of course, first important thing is analyzing the site and to understand all the concepts. There was lots of talks on that part. As I talked about this in the 5 different cities, we became together with lots of different data analysis report with different companies. In this report, we are talking about why did we choose these cities, what does private sector needs in these cities, how much sector currently in the city, and take a look at what are the gaps between the sectors. And because we are working with the education ministry, it handles the work that we have been working together and creates a training program for that. As you can see from here, from from 100 different sectors, we have online talks and online meetings has been done. We sent them a survey of 32 questions, and with the decrease, we did our face-to-face meetings too, and we asked the same questions to them face-to-face. We talked about which kind of personnel they need, and if they, which kind of trainings they give. We asked about that. I got details on that part and learned about that. In the current status, we create a program. First, for our project, our main shareholders, sectoral SDKs become one of our best partners. And for wind and for other things, we try to work with the government-free organizations in that concept. As you can see from here, is in this renewable energy for hybrid solutions has been prepared. As you can see from here, our training program has 30 models. We start with safety, job safety and health, and it changes from there. In our 5 different cities, when the Istanbul joins our program, it will be 6, and our program shall continue on. For these 5 cities I will talk about, we have a work like this. As you all know, trade schools are working on the new institutes that create students. Sustainability is important for our work that we are doing. In this concept, we are trying to work with trade high schools. We want to increase the capacity of teachers over there. And we want to increase the educations for trainings, educations quality better. And in that project for the technology innovation, we have schools that giving educational part will be part of our projects on that part. Of course, we have renewable energy laboratories in our night schools, and we try to give our education trainings on that part. And with the private sector's help, the public can benefit from as we have said, the laboratories we have created. 291 person has and stopped the training. It was for 2 months. Our 295, 391 has graduated from this program, and you can see from here there's lots of female Syrians, male Syrians trainees. As you can see, it was a cashier numbers trainings, and as we said, we have lots of courses, more than 25%, because as we said, one of our main subject of our project is to handle the gender equality, and in that concept, with the information and the test results, trainings most successful trainees were the women's. Most successful trainees, five out of 4 of them are women's, and it makes us really happy. Think about this. Here, as you can see, we have lots of cities. We talk about 5 different cities. In that cities, we created renewable energy laboratories. These laboratories are used in our training programs, and they haven't prepared on that part. As you can see from here, from automation system, and we can see lots of different panels here. There's lots of laboratory for that. As for in Istanbul, one of them is in Ataşehir in Bahçelievler. We have two laboratory. We are currently creating two laboratories for renewable energy, and there's wind too, as I've been talking about it. There's 90 meters of wind turbine we have. But I want to say that when we are giving training on that about the turbines, we did the installation, but our trainees will be doing the maintenance of these turbines so that they can use all of their power. We are trying to work on that. I think we will see it how good it is in the coming times. Of course, this is the solar panels that we have bought. When we put it on the system to make them see if they're installed like this, and after that they will taken out, and all of our trainees and students will learn about this. Our projects, when coming to this part, give this with only for we try to give our trainings to the persons that older than 18. Lots of our middle-aged trainees has some problems with getting certification for renewable energy. For online trainings, we try to create a combined training method, and we try to give them that. I think we have to take a look at the we have to take a look at this strong impacts of the face-to-face training, and also the extra circulars that can happen after the class. We're trying our best to work on it because they can take this when the less coming times only just do their work. They come to our renewable energy laboratories. This is seen as that in 2021. Lots of people and started trainings. To create a new program for that part, we tried to give writing training. As for the lifelong training, we tried to give new things. For Ministry of Education, it has been added to their normal things. It is my last slide. As you can see from here, we try to help the grown-ups to enter to employment. We try to give them a training on that part. We give them a training model of 247 hours of training. More 103 hours of it comes from online, and 144 of hours come from face to face. It is for Turkey. It's a skill training program first done for grown-ups in Turkey, and creating opportunities for grown-ups in the renewable energy subject is really important for us. They could have flexible hours thanks to this program. And because they know about applicable way of the working doing job, they can create more job types we can say that we are taking two birds with one stone. We are really happy for that, and we hope that we can reach more people with our project. And I end my slide. Thank you for listening to me and giving me this stage.
Thank you very much, Tuche, for very comprehensive and very interesting explanation of things you did for this project. And I believe this nicely complement things which we heard in previous presentations from Emre, what could be different shades of green and how we need to do skill building for these different shades of green. And what we heard from Anne, how different approaches and tools could be used to do this circular economy working for everybody in society. We have 25 minutes for discussion, and I have three overarching questions for you. Please feel free to address them in the way you would like to address, maybe one of them, maybe all three of them. One question is, how can we achieve win-win solutions for green transition and labor market? Because I know that there are a lot of concerns that green transition could harm labor market. On other hand, maintaining brown jobs and maintaining jobs at all costs could be very harmful in long perspective. And Emre showed us a couple of examples where jobs are maintained, but they are clearly not decent, neither green jobs. Second question is how we could, because we are talking about complex system, right? We have technological advances, but they're implemented in human society, and we have to have some societal changes. How we combine them for green transition? What kind of technology adaptation is required in society? But on the other hand, how society perhaps could change, and maybe mindsets have to change to adapt new technology. And I think Anne's presentation provides very interesting example, especially in this T-shaped approach to skills formation, because it's not only teaching people how to do this or that technology, but more about understanding how to use this technology. And last but not least, how to ensure that it works for everyone, how to ensure that no one left behind. And I think all of you addressed these, but especially Tuche when she talked about this green energy for social cohesion. So that's three questions. We have a chat. Our chat is open, and we could get questions from the public. And maybe I will give floor first to Emre. Emre, please, do you have answer to any of these questions?
Teşekkürler Mihail.
Yeah, thank you. For green transition, for workforce, for the protect environmental, win-win scenarios are currently applicable, and it has been talked in the last session. It is most of social security. As you all know, there's two things. When we take a look at the reforms and all of that part, we have to take a look at the actors to sustain. We'll have to take a look at the actors of the sustainability part, and for that, we need to create mechanisms. And as we have one of the platforms on that part, we work when it comes to the business life, business sector. And we know that it won't change that much. I think a lot of our participants are from private sector. It is most about the quality change, and that kind of question. They may have seen these kind of things. This sometimes doesn't give the expected results. When we take a background of it, we can see that workers, they don't join this kind of things. mostly we can see that it's mostly for the white collared works. They can be a part of it maybe when they are not on that subject. This changing process, we can see that it is not successful in the business. For the blue collar workers, we are for the green transition, we can see that people are working on it. It will work. Persons that using that equipment will know about that. The upper management won't know the opportunities we can use. If there's a way to use less energy usage, the employees know this. Employees won't know that, and to put the employees to the decision making, it will be easier. To leaving no one behind, what should we do? We have to do green work. We have to make the current works more green. But lots of people, there will be peoples left behind. Taking everyone in this concept is really hard. Think about this. Miner, when he says that maybe they don't want to do the job of an agricultural farmer. What are we going to say to this worker? We have to take a look at social economics. Maybe we can create early retirement for the places that has. We have to be more, because we know the green transition won't take everyone to the ship. So we have to talk about different things too. Thank you for giving me speech, giving me time to speech.
Thank you very much, Emre. And I think my major takeaway from this is that it could be very different paths to green and circular economy, right? So for some people, it will be retraining and they could do something better, some more green. But for some people, we will need to provide them adequate social protection. And for some other people, perhaps we need complete restructuring of the sector. We talked in the previous session that some sectors, for instance, coal in European Union, it's a kind of dead end. It will disappear in some time. So thank you very much for this perspective. And I think this understanding that we have different pathways to the final result is really important. And I would like to give the floor to Anne, and we have a question from the public. And let me read it, because it's give very nice spin of things which we already discussed. As you all mentioned, fair transformation is a gradual process. So at what stage should we start this process? Should we give priority to economy? Should we give priority to education? Is there more serious areas where the transformation should begin? Thanks. And I think it's quite nicely resonate with your approach, which provide a lot of different tools and different paths to circular economy. So please, Anne.
Thank you. And thank you for a really good question. And as you said, that different pathways are needed. So in that sense, it is very challenging to prioritize that, which has to come first. I myself am a big fan of education, and I think everything starts from there. So yes, the money makes the world go round. The euro is the best consultant, as the sayings go. But at the same time, if we don't start with education, then we won't have those decision makers who will direct those cash flows in the future. So I think that in that sense, the earlier we can start, the better. But I wouldn't nonetheless kind of prioritize them. I think I totally agree that we need a number of different solutions and parallel tracks. And I'd also like to highlight kind of a sort of different angles, such as role of media when I'm talking, and talking from the Finnish perspective. I think that plays a crucial role. And I think that if we go back to like 10 years ago, there were very little news about in mainstream media about climate issues. And now it's changed completely. They've hired people to talk about these issues, and they got ambassadors. And so, and when we work with company directors, it's become part of their vocabulary. And when it becomes part of their vocabulary, they see what's possible. Before they could see what's impossible, but now they see that, okay, this is possible. And it's not only possible, but it's kind of likely and necessary to happen. So when their worldview starts shifting, then that also starts directing cash flows and money into a greener direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. And thank you very much for highlighting the role of media, because we are typically talking about workers, we are talking about businesses, we are talking about policymakers, but putting the right spot on all this could be really important. And I spotted one quite important thing in your presentation. You talked not just about green as a kind of less polluting, better quality, and so on and so forth, but you talked about regenerative agriculture, right? So this is quite important, because I think we start putting more value on environmental things, and this perspective, when we value in other things rather than just KPIs or just profits, is a really important change, and it requires joint work. So thank you very much for this. And as you talked about skills formation, you talked about education, I would like to give a question to Tuche, because this is quite interesting project. This is very tough environment. This is kind of emergency situation environment. We have people, and we are striving for social cohesion. At the same time, we managed to do green energy, and we managed to provide skills development. So, Tushi, if you could a little bit elaborate on how you worked on this skills development for Syrians and Turkish people simultaneously, how it helped them to enable access to employment opportunities in renewable energy sector. What happened with the sector? Was it growing, or you worked with established companies? How companies were involved in this process? Because that could be a risk that you teach people something and they have no job later on. So could you a little bit elaborate on this? Because this is really exciting project. Please.
Teşekkürler tekrar.
Thank you. At first, as I said in the for my slide, we first take a look at what the private sector needed. As you said, for the work trainings, with the crisis right now we are having, to make them reachable. There was lots of work trainings given to the Syrian people. We started this, and from the first of it, we tried to put it to our own system. As you all know, private sector hiring Syrian people are not that, the private sectors are not that inclined to hire Syrian people. It could create problems because there's also cultural problems can arise. We asked about this from our discussion with the private sectors, and we'll try to make them join to our process at first. The cohesion for economy is important. The reason we took the renewable energy, and we have to find a correct way when we're trying to tackle with the climate change. If we don't work together, we shall have lots of problems. That's why we take this. And that's why we try to create a difference on that part. That's why we have different corporations. And they have lots of colleagues here. I want to continue on this. We can only work together if we work together. All of our trainings are giving for the combined classes. They take the education and training together. If there's no employment guarantee given by it, we are working for a collaboration work to help them reach has lots of communications. And for that, we try to give lots of incentives on that part. We together with our trainees that give our best in the coming times. We create and we have trainees on that part. We try to put them more on the. We have also another cooperation part about help with the women in the workforce. We have a women cooperative that work together. We have to lessen the cost of the operational cost of that women cooperative. We try to give them solar panel help, or we have also Syrian peer citizens there. And with everything we are currently doing, we try to help with the watering system in their own fields as United Nations agreements between the Syrian crisis. We try to create a cohesion. It all happens in real time. We think we choose as a subject. We're trying our best on that part. As for Syrian and Turkish citizens, for green and clean energy, we try to increase their awareness and get them new skills and try to have a cohesion of social and economical.
Thank you very much, Tuğçe, for providing such a really, really interesting life example. I think we could start closing here because we had quite extensive discussion. And out of this discussion, I think I have three main takeaways. One takeaway is that this is really complex and we should pay attention to a lot of moving parts. That's why we cannot have a blueprint for this. We should probe, sense, and respond to this. That's what you just talked about and what Emre was talking about. And Anne's presentation clearly outlined that we have a lot of tools to do this. Tools emerging. There are a lot of experience and we should share experience. And I think this is my second takeaway, that we have a kind of growing ecosystem and these green jobs should grow along these value chains or value lines. In previous session, one presenter told that they have, he was talking about waste management, new technologies in waste management. And he told, look, we have 7 different businesses and none of them are profitable. But when they are working together, they start the whole chain becoming profitable because some provide solutions for sorting waste, some provide solutions for pyrolysis, which produce oil, which could be sold further. So we should think about partnership. And third is, I believe we should focus quite a lot on mindset shift and looking on what is valuable. And that's why I very much like this T-shaped approach to skill formation, because it's not just nuts and bolts, but also seeing how it fits into bigger picture and seeing what we are really value and have reason to value. I think I close on this note, and I would like to thank all presenters, and I would like to thank our distinguished audience for very nice question. And I pass the floor back to Banu. Banu, please, the floor is yours.
Sayın Teddy, Sayın Dönmez.
Esteemed fellows, esteemed Saud, esteemed Dönmez, esteemed Rodowski, thank you for your great contributions. We thank you. Our dear participants, we will have a lunch break. I hope we will see you at 2 p.m.